For the past couple of off seasons, the saga around the Washington Redskins dealt with what's going on with Kirk Cousins. Is he going to be re-signed long-term? Is he going to get another one-year franchise tag? Is this team going to sign him and trade him? Are they going to finally pay him big-time money? Well, in this past offseason, we finally got the answer. The Redskins officially closed the book on the Kirk Cousins chapter of their history by allowing him to leave via free agency and ultimately making the trade for Alex Smith, sending a third-round pick in Kendall Fuller to the Chiefs for the veteran, former #1 overall pick out of Utah. It was interesting because it was like the past couple of seasons, you really identified the Redskins with Kirk Cousins and the whole drama about what was going on with his contract. And it's easy to say that Kirk Cousins not being re-signed by the Redskins was a really good move, especially when you look at the fact the Vikings gave him the big-time guaranteed money long-term contract he was seeking. And they went from a team that appeared in the NFC Championship game in 2017 to not making the playoffs at all this past season. It's also easy to say that this deal worked out well for the Redskins, not re-signing Kirk Cousins long-term, trading for Alex Smith, because at one point in time, they had a 6-3 start. They were actually in first place in the NFC East. Easy to say that too. It was always a weird thing to me, though, is you get rid of Kirk Cousins because you don't want to devote big money long time to a quarterback like that. So then you trade away draft assets to get an older quarterback to pay him just a little bit less, but still long-term money. Just didn't seem very wise and very sound logic to me, and it still doesn't. It still doesn't. The ironic thing is while I had said in the past that the Redskins needed to go ahead and pay him, I was wrong. And this whole situation with Kirk Cousins, ironically enough, has really forced me to reevaluate how I think about the quarterback position, and in particular teams, and whether or not they should invest big-time, long-term dollars into quarterbacks in today's salary cap environment of the NFL. It's one of these things that Bruce Allen was right. The execution on the back end, of course, was screwed up because he's a moron, but he was right. He shouldn't have invested big-time money into Kirk Cousins. The problem was he still invested pretty big-time money into Alex Smith, who is an average NFL starter, and you just can't do that in today's game. You just cannot. And sure, injuries can happen, and for a guy in recent years that have been very, very healthy, what happened to Alex Smith was very fluky, but it is what it is. You ultimately let Kirk Cousins go to another team where they didn't make the playoffs to trade for Alex Smith where he ultimately didn't finish the season with you. And you are still tied up into a guy with big money over a long period of time, just like the Wizards are with John Wall, and you'll get absolutely no return on that investment in the short term, probably in 2019. And when you look back at this 2018 season, there was some potential possibility here for the Redskins. Like I mentioned, the 6-3 start. In each of those first 6 wins, they allowed 17 points or less defensively. In part, that was because they were able to run the ball. Alex Smith managed the game. You didn't turn over the ball a ton. You could play it close to the vest. And that pretty good front seven, in particular, that really good defensive line of the Redskins, was able to take root. And this was a tough team. This had the feel of a team at one point that was going to win 10 or 11 games, maybe win that division, probably get beat in the first round, but still make the playoffs, which you would have had to have viewed as a successful 2018 season for the Redskins. But then, unfortunately, it all started to crumble for the Washington Redskins. You had Alex Smith with his devastating leg injury out for the rest of 2018. It looks like he could be out all of 2019. You had a roulette wheel of crappy quarterbacks, Colt McCoy, Mark Sanchez, need I say any more, other injuries throughout the roster with guys like Chris Thompson and so forth. And all of a sudden, the Redskins go from really controlling their own destiny in the NFC East, staring down the barrel of a playoff appearance at 6-3, to losing their next 4 games and 6 out of their last 7. So they went from a team that could win 10 or 11 to a team that went 7-9. A lot of it tied into the quarterback position because the guy they had traded for and given pretty big money to in Alex Smith ultimately got hurt. And it's just a foolish, foolish deal. Teams are going to, again, really have to reevaluate the quarterback position and how they distribute their salary cap dollars. Is it really worth paying second and third tier quarterbacks $20+ million a year? The Minnesota Vikings and their fans in particular, I'm sure, would say most certainly not with Kirk Cousins. And for Redskins fans, you got to wonder, do you really still defend that Alex Smith deal? Just saying. I mean, ultimately, this team, their defense was kind of middle of the road. I did mention I thought it was going to be improved this year, and it was, especially when they were a relevant team. When you did have Smith in the starting lineup, and they were playing games kind of close to the events, the defense was better. Kind of fell apart late in the year. Offensively, this team was okay running the football. I mean, you had Adrian Peterson go over 1,000 yards, so you kind of got that last type of somewhat vintage season from AP, a quality year at least. But you couldn't move the ball through the air. 29th in the league in passing yards per game. Not a lot of balance to that team, not a lot of big plays out of that team offensively. Defensively, like I said, kind of middle of the road, but you did get some very good performances this year. Ioannidis had a good season again. Jonathan Allen, your first-round pick from last year, had 8 sacks. Ryan Kerrigan, one of the most criminally underrated players in the league, finished with 13 sacks. What a shame for Ryan Kerrigan. He's had 8 seasons in his career in the NFL. He's pushing 30 now. And he doesn't get nearly the love that he deserves because he plays on such a crappy team like Washington, and it's a shame. You look at this Redskins team and you're like, well, it didn't finish out the way you wanted it to, but they could have been better and they could have done more, and that's true. And that was exactly the ceiling for them. Like, if you look ahead, it doesn't look promising. Sure, the 2018 draft class, you had Deron Payne, who I thought came in and played well at times as a rookie for sure, but you got nothing out of Darius Geis because of the knee injury. What will he be able to do when he comes back? You look at some of the other guys in that draft class, only time will tell how they ultimately pan out or not. This is a team with only $20 million in cap space, so they don't have a ton of flexibility to go out there and spend a bunch of money to plug holes in the roster and beef up the roster. The reality is, when you look at the Redskins right now, especially with the thought of Alex Smith potentially missing most, if not all, of the 2019 season, this is a team that is in this weird place of, they got a guy in Jay Gruden, their head coach, who's probably coaching for his job, I would feel. And at the same point in time, there's no realistic hope or possibility for this team to be all that successful next year. Being based off of what? Based off of what? If anything, it feels like one of these awkward transition periods where you ride out the string for the last year with this current head coach, and you go out there and you try to find your long-term quarterback, but you sit there and you just ride out the string, get that new head coach, and figure out what to do from there.
Like, if you go into this offseason, the number one need for this team is a young quarterback. It's part of the fault of Bruce Allen, of course, because he's a moron, as to why they felt the need to have to go out there and trade for Alex Smith and give him the big contract that they did. Because knowing the saga they had with Kirk Cousins over the past couple of years, of course, at no point in time did this organization effectively draft a quarterback to potentially step in and replace Kirk Cousins to get the benefit of having a rookie quarterback on a rookie fucking contract in today's salary cap environment. So they make this great decision to not re-sign Kirk Cousins for salary cap reasons, and yet ultimately failed to do the second part of that was equally important, which was find the young quarterback that could help you from a salary cap standpoint. I just don't get it. This team is so goddamn stupid. And what else would you expect out of an organization run by Daniel Snyder and Bruce Allen? But quarterback is the number one need. They need other help on offense too. They could use some depth at tight end. You could use some depth again on offensive line because it feels like at times they have trouble getting their starting 5 healthy on the offensive line and keeping them that way. They most certainly could use a playmaker at wide receiver. Doxson's been a disappointment. Jamison Crowder's a role player. Paul Richardson was hurt, missed a good portion of the season. So they could use a big-time type of receiver. I don't know if they'll be able to find one in this draft or not. But ultimately, the Redskins are in this place where their whole draft philosophy to me has to be revolving around the quarterback. And I'd be really, really surprised if they didn't invest a first or second round pick on that position, because you've got to. 1, you can't rely on Alex Smith long term. 2, even if you do, that's a fool's errand too, because how far is Alex Smith really going to take you? And ultimately, here's the lesson that all people should be learning. You either need to be in one of 3 cycles. You either need to be building towards trying to be a championship team, which you need to do around a young quarterback, B, a championship level team, or C, realize you're not, and gut it and start the fuck over. What you don't want to be is D, mediocre to bad. That's where the Redskins are with Alex Smith. They're a little bit worse without him.
but not bad enough on the surface, especially with the head coach that's going to be coaching for his job potentially in 2019, to do what they need to do, which is draft a young quarterback and completely retool around that young quarterback. So it could be a very rough season, as bad as you felt like 2018 ended in disappointment if you're a Redskins fan. 2019 doesn't look like it's going to be getting a whole lot better.